Hey everyone, welcome to the World Games Film Room. In this episode we're looking at the USA versus Colombia semi-final from the World Games. It was the final in 2017, loads of people expected it to be the final this time too, but because the US lost to Germany, they fell to second place and had to play Colombia in the semi. A lot of people thought that the winner of this game would go on to win the tournament. It was a great game and there were loads of interesting turnovers, so let's take a look at it. Colombia turn on their first defensive point. It's a mixed execution error with some blame going to Alexander Foord for putting the disc a little too high, and some blame going to Maria Ferrero for not bringing it down. Julio Duque throws an inside backhand to Jimena Montaña at the front of the stack. The throw is a little above Montaña and she fumbles the catch. Nate Goff's poach helps cause this turnover. He's marking Hot Jimenez, who's just behind Montaña, standing inactive in the stack. After the play there's some contact and Montaña calls a foul. I think it's a close call to decide who initiates the contact, but I do think it's hard to describe the contact as non-minor. So it's not a receiving foul. Montaña makes the correct decision to retract the foul call and let the turnover stand. Regardless, Goff should and could cut out any contact from this effort. Trope has the disc in the middle of the field and has Jack Williams free slashing across. She throws it really quite away behind Williams and even Alba is able to get the D. Trope might feel pressure to not put this throw too wide because Manu is kind of blocking the lane as she's pursuing OP Payne. No player is more likely to leap out and get a poach T here than Manu.
Oh goodness! Valeria Cárdenas with another moment for the all-time reel.
As Lindsley checks in the disc, Julio Duque is already at stall 5 due to an offensive foul downfield, so he needs to find an option quickly. He fails to break Lindsley's mark to get a pass out to Manu. Duque's pivoting really does him no favours here. He starts right shoulder back, aiming to get Lindsley to commit to stopping the inside. Lindsley's not bothered about the inside and all this move does is give him more time to cover the wide backhand pivot. When Duque gives up on this throw, he turns all the way around facing his own end zone, which communicates I'm not interested in throwing you to the whole team. He also loses vision of what's going on downfield, and that means as we get to stall 7, Alba's cut is do or die. Dylan Freechild is very flat, Alba jabs at him and Freechild finds a really nice defensive position here, protecting his weak hip with his body positioning and ushering Alba up the line. Alba obliges, goes up the line and earns very little separation, and Duque's inside flick is snagged by Freechild. Final thing here, the frustration shown by Duque before the throw probably doesn't do wonders for his completion likelihood. Personally, I'm not a fan of gesturing as a thrower, big over-the-top unrealistic fakes that communicate I don't want to throw to anyone, or shouting instructions at cutters. The job of finding a good option is tricky enough as is, and to take the extra workload of directing traffic is not advisable in my opinion. It's a different story in a stoppage, but Duque looks like he's going to turn here in the same way that people walk up and look like they're going to miss a penalty. Maybe that's just me, tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm going to let me from the Valeria Cárdenas MVP videos take you through the next two turns. If you've already seen the analysis, you can skip to this timestamp to head over to the next turnover. The start of this game isn't great for Colombia. There's a miscommunication turnover here as Foord fakes then throws the original throw, but Cartagena has understandably already turned away. The US call a timeout and then set up a vertical stack. Watchers of the US World Game Scouting Report video will know what's going to happen here. Let me remind you of the US's vertical stack plan.
From a slow sideline start, the US consistently wanted to start their offense by taking a swing pass to the dump. We heard Jimmy Mickle ordering this by calling 1 as he picked up the disc from the sideline.
So the first look is to Chastain, and it's probably going to be a swing pass, and it looks like Valeria knows this too. Check out her defensive positioning, her hip positioning and her eyes clearly on the threat, and that threat is Chastain. From this angle we can see what Jimmy Mickle is seeing, and it's clear that Cartagena knows Jimmy wants to take a swing pass, so she has positioned herself to deny the swing and force the trickier upline throw. Off the initiation, Chastain jukes, earns a step of separation, and already Valeria is sprinting to intercept the disc. Mickle sends the around backhand, but Valeria gets there first, bats the disc out of play, catches it for good measure, and then casually initiates this flick give and go move, which gets the Colombian offense moving and leads to a score. If the US went 5-1 up here, it could have been a very different game. This is a very bog standard miscommunication error. It's not clear why Valeria Cárdenas slows down here. She has plenty of separation for an easy dump pass. Khalif picks up the disc and immediately sends it deep to Helton. It's just slightly overthrown. Valeria's throw is rifled pretty hard because the window to throw to Simon Ramirez is closing due to Alejandro Torres' positioning. No Colombia players can get to the disc in time, and ultimately the turn has to be chalked up to the throwing execution error. This is another miscommunication error. I really don't see the rationale for Chastain to reverse momentum and start coming back to Khalif instead of continuing to run to the middle of the field. I also think there's room for Khalif to put a bit more touch on this disc, make it easier to catch and to let the receiver run onto the disc whilst having a view of the end zone. Maybe there's a world where Chastain could make an outrageous grab on a much floatier disc, but realistically probably not. This is a simple execution error from Lindsley and the disc is lofted well above Trope. Khalif's clutch phone replay review means that this is the final turnover and the USA win 13-11. On to the takeaways.
We're seeing a replay from the phone.
Two clear takeaways for me from this game. Firstly, Colombia struggled on the restart after stoppages. 5 of Colombia's 6 turns come less than 5 passes from a restart. 2 instances were turns on the first pass, 1 on the second pass, 1 on the fourth pass and 1 on the fifth pass. 2 remedies to this. Practice restarting the play, getting the disc into the hands of your flow generating players like the Cárdenas twins, both Ramirez's and Cantor, and keep trusting in the flow even when stoppages lead to a loss of momentum. The second is to act so that less stoppages occur. I wasn't a fan of every pick call made by the US this game, but many were preventable if the cutters were more deliberate about avoiding crossovers. The second takeaway is I feel like the Colombians couldn't generate much defensive pressure. There was one clutch poach D from Valeria out of the timeout, but it never really felt like the Colombian defense could deny the Americans or even raise the temperature to force players to take trickier options. Thanks for watching this video. Join us on Patreon where you can already see the next episode of the series where I look at Germany versus Australia in the second semi-final. See you next time.
And who's there but Chastain for the USA? They take the game. They've beaten Colombia 13-11.